All right, for all those out there, we are got the 100th episode of the Human Cloud Pod. We have the top 5 most listened to guests, and we are just going to do a data cage match in the words of Steve. Before, we had a little chat about Ryanair and how they have a patent on standing up, and so everyone's used to pain, and we're also going to get into the progress of our industry. But what I want to do is literally super, super quick. The focus of our conversation is going to be Freelance 2.0, how we're going from a gig economy to a strategic sourcing channel. And what I really want to kind of have as one of the overwhelming messages is I hope we can have what I call a pyramid of relief, which is it's been a tough year, right? We can't lie. Q1 and Q2 has been tough for some. What I want to highlight, Tony, this is why you're a little brown noser, is because I have John's article here of the upside of a down market, how to take advantage of tough times. And then I have, this came out this morning, an article about Shopify having a cost calculator for pointless meetings. And the reason I put this here is because why aren't we just having more freelancers, right? This would fix all of it. So I want to say that it's been tough, but there's optimism and it just should already be adopted. And a lot of other stuff we wouldn't even have to worry about, like pointless meetings. So I then want to kind of frame this and say, there's some awesome stats and there's some awesome case studies, and we're not where we were 5 years ago. We're doing really well. And so there's been 27% year over year growth in 100K plus freelancers in 22. Go talk to Steve about this. He was, behind this one. Another one is 60% of execs said they'll substantially replace full-time employees with independent workers in the next 3 years. There's also data around a lot of the layoffs they're replacing with freelancers. John put this up, 35/65% full and part-time freelancers right now. Tony, your company put this out, 9 in 10 freelancers believe their best days are ahead. We're now a $5.4 trillion market. Incredible. I want to quickly highlight what we've seen when we talk about growing up. There's 4 things I think that are important. Is we're going from small and gig to large and fractional. We're going from horizontal to niche. We're going from hiring one freelancer to hiring many. We're going from just being for SMBs to being able to unlock the enterprise. I'm just going to kind of skip because we'll talk about that in our thing. Last thing, what the hell are we going to call the freelance economy? Here's sort of a heat map of various terms. What I want to say is that the default has been FTE and everything else has kind of been like just trying to replicate that, so agency or contracts. But we're really talking about a brand new option. And for the past 10 years, whenever I think about the term, I think of Winston Churchill saying that it's the worst term except all the others have been tried. And I want to pose that literally when I say I'm a freelancer or you're hiring a freelancer, it's just work where you see the whites of someone else's eyes. So that's it. I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to give a quick brief that we literally have the best people in the industry in terms of every sector of this exposed right now. We have the best marketplaces with Tony and Mari. We have the best researchers with Steve and John. And we have Mina over at Airbus to actually give us what the hell the clients need. So I'm going to open it to y'all. And I'm going to start with you, Mari. Pulse check. How you feeling?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks for including me in on this. This is an honor to be a part of such amazing thinkers and innovators in the space. And I'm always grateful to be a part and share my take on how things are going. Right now, it's good. John's article this week was excellent and timely. And, we've heard a lot of it. We've heard a lot that the last 18 months, 12 months has been, a series of roller coasters and things have changed. They kind of gone back and forth, but we're doing good. We're starting to see things turn around. And we've been trying to encourage our community that things are changing. And I love the stat 9 in 10 believe that the best days are ahead, because I 100% agree. I think once we can kind of get out of whatever we want to call the economy right now, once we get past this, I think we'll see a huge upside just in the industry as a whole, both in adoption from the client side, but then also just growth and new innovations on products and how we're kind of building together. So I'm excited.
Neat. Perfect. All right, Mari, you throw the ball. Who's next?
Let's go to John.
So how am I feeling? I'm feeling cautiously optimistic. Not as optimistic as you are, Mari, but I hope to get there soon in terms of the business. but very optimistic for those people that have learned, and this will sound like a funny thing, and Mari, you understand this better than most, for the people that have learned that freelancing is in fact a business and not a lifestyle. I think that what we're going to see is a lot more positivity. So, for example, in that article that I wrote around the upside of a down market, I mean, we've got great examples of companies that are just killing it, but they're killing it because they've got the basics in place. They weren't created to spend money. They weren't created to run through a fund. They were created to build a business, serve customers, make money. Kind of like the bodega on the corner of anybody's street. And that's the big message, that these are businesses. They need to be run professionally, not artistically. This isn't an atelier. And when people do that, wonderful things happen. And I'll give you just one example, if I may. I sit on a bunch of boards because it's wonderful to meet some young people and see what they're doing. And one of them is MASH. It's called This Is MASH. They're a Melbourne-based Australian company. I asked them this morning, we're on the phone around 7 o'clock this morning, how you doing? They said, we're up 75% so far this year. They are, because they do all of the hustle things that businesses need to do. They're not waiting for a call from a client. They're out there pitching. And those are the things that I hope every freelance platform and every freelance individual needs to understand. And that is, this is either a bad or a good market, depending on what you're offering. What are you offering?
Yep. I love it, John. And it's funny, actually, the call I had before this was a marketplace executive saying June to Q1 was rough, but Q2, we came out of the gates so strong. And so we're hearing that across. All right, John, you throw the ball. Who do you want? You got Steve, Tony, Mina?
I don't know Mina, and what a pleasure it is to meet him. Hello, Mina. I'm John Younger. And
hey, how's it going?
I would love you to go next for several reasons, including the quality of your dress. I want a shirt like that.
So yeah, thanks so much for having me. And yeah, I mean, on another side, we've been sort of, as you said earlier, Matt, we're on the customer side of things. So we're trying to see what's possible through the freelance world. I personally don't like the word freelancing. It's good that you mentioned it, because I think it should be the freedom economy. It really would empower the younger generations to do whatever they want to do, keep traveling and really enjoying exploring life as much as possible. But on our end, we've been seeing incredible value from it. Like but everybody's rushing to recruit people, and if you don't have to recruit because you can easily get the projects ongoing, then you're exponentially accelerating what you can do, right? So imagine as a team, you have a project to start, but then you don't have enough people. You're going to delay the project by X amount of months because we don't have the people. But with the freelance or the freedom economy, overnight, you can simply say, okay, push a project out there, overall, you can build a team in no time. And then you push things out and you test things. So you end up not shelving products. You empower people, you empower projects, you empower the company, you empower talents outside the company, internal talents. So everybody actually ends up winning from it. You just need to find a way to fine tune everything and make sure people don't feel threatened by it. But it's sort of a streamlined approach to accelerate things. But yeah, I love it.
You know what I love more, Mina, is that you called it the freedom economy, and you, of course, are our lone French wolf over there. And all I'm going to say is, if you expect a statue, okay, because you guys gave us a statue early on for any history buffs out there. If you guys expect a statue, John has to send it to you, because John's the New Yorker and the prideful New Yorker. Steve is out there digging for gold, so he's off the hook because he's in California. And Tony, Mari, and I are Southerners. So what we would like to say is John will send you a statue for freedom, and we'll sit over here and just watch and say hi. And also, we coined the term freedom fry. It's no longer French fry. I just want you to know. Never forget that word. Yes. You guys remember that, by the way? Freedom fry? Mm-hmm. I remember it vividly. It's when my grandma would take me to McDonald's. I never forget. I was like, Grandma, freedom fry? Mina, you throw the ball over to Steve or Tony.
I'll go to Steve.
I wanted to follow up on what John said about focusing on the business in addition to the work. It was about a decade ago, we did a study of artists successful artists, and we found them by polling art experts on who the top artists were at the time. We then interviewed them, and what we found was interviewed them and then surveyed a bunch of other artists, a broader group. The broader group of artists basically spent about 80% of their time on their art and spent about 20% of their time on their business. The top 100 artists on average, at least rated by the art experts, spent about 50% of their time on art and about 50% of their time on business. So they were not only more successful commercially, they were more successful in terms of their artistic reputations. And so, we think the same thing's true across, if we want to call them freelancers and independent workers. You got to understand you're a business in addition to whatever your skill set is.
I love it. All right, Tony. Steve, you keep going. So your mouth open up.
That was it, man.
Tony, go ahead.
So quick. That was perfect.
You get a lot from a guy that gives you this gold, man. Come on.
Steve, can you do a mic drop, though? Do you have a mic next to you? Just a quick mic drop.
I may sign off at this point.
Oh, man. Tony, where were you, man? Give us the pulse check.
Yeah, Steve's great. A tough act to follow, but
Good luck.
I'm really happy to be on this call because from a pulse check standpoint, I couldn't be more optimistic for where this, and I love the term meetup, freedom economy is headed. I really believe that it's all about empowering workers. I'm going to be back at my alma mater next week to talk to grad students. And what I like about the program is it's very much about the balance between talent in businesses and companies and then leaders. And we're seeing this shift from the old school hierarchical control and command structure to a new paradigm of you've got to collaborate. You have to bring people together from all different backgrounds, all different locations, and those that do it right and do it well are the most successful. And I frankly enjoy seeing these like return to work edicts blowing up in CEO spaces because it's all about what talent wants. It's meeting those expectations, whether it's freedom or flexibility or both, bringing those together at the intersection of where and how they work, that I think is going to be really exciting and just going to continue to expand in the next several years. I think we're just seeing the start, and this is still very, very new, but it's really exciting. And the biggest word, and I think Mina uses this as well, is empowerment. We see empowerment of talent, and I think that's incredible and exciting. So
Can I add one other piece?
No.
Can I add one other piece? And that is, a long time ago, I started following a platform called LifeSci Hub. LifeSci Hub does really cool stuff. And they had just started when I discovered them. It was wonderful because they were providing project management for pharmaceutical firms. They saved some of our lives. And the way that they supported Moderna, the way they support Pfizer, and the way that they contributed to the development of these the serums for COVID. I'm working with a very interesting company. I'm just going to take 1 second. It's called Cerebra. It's Kazakhstan. Cerebra AI has figured out a way to use a more reliable and less expensive prediction of acute stroke. Now they're doing that in part through freelancers. I'm 71. I am very interested in anybody that's dealing with stroke. This is a very good thing. and I want to add one word to the freedom economy, Mina. I love it. And that is, we're providing a hell of a lot of value. Not just value to individuals, but value to the world. And I think people need to understand that. And I think that we need to figure out ways to celebrate the contribution that freelancing is making to an awful lot of really important things. Protect lives, save lives, create happiness, provide education. I mean, all of those things. We are part of so much. And we're invisible because we're part of everything and not distinct in anything. We got to find distinction so that people see our play.
I love it. And so, Mina, I'm going to throw it over to you. Okay, you ready for this? Because freedom economy is cute. right? Remember, we own Freedom Fries, so you have to get it from our hands. But I want to get tactical into the actual impact, right? I want to get super, super selfish, and I want to hear from the lens of a VP in marketing product engineering. Why should I care? And I know some of the incredible outcomes that you have been able to drive by having freelancers. But what I kind of hope we can do is, if you could, Mina, John is going to give you the statue if you can kind of bring us into your world of what are some of the incredible outcomes that having a freelance workforce has given you. And then Mari, I'm going to throw it over to you. And because I want to hear about what happens when you can partner with other marketplaces to increase the scope of what's possible. And I think when we talk about the scope and scale of what you've done, Mari, and then we hear about the tactical impact of what you've been able to do at Airbus, Mina, I think everyone's head's going to explode. And I really want John to send you a statue, to be honest.
Yeah, of course. Of course. I mean, we started this journey actually back in 2018 in Airbus. And I have to say, I owe a lot of it to Steve Radar, who really inspired us to take this leap of faith, to be honest. But one of the things we've seen is, again, if we go back to the term empowerment, there's a lot of projects now that have managed to take off that would have never been looked at, right? And then you empower as well the talent to try something different and see the idea come to fruition. And then you're empowering the external talents that wouldn't have access to a company like Airbus unless they live in the cities that where Airbus operates, right? So some of the examples that we have, I can give you is we get some renders done, some of these designs, etc. I can tell you they're like 10% of the cost of what they would cost with traditional providers, right? But then you're paying these people very fairly. You're not actually doing the model where you're exploiting people. They are the ones setting their hourly rates, and you're saying, I'm fine with that. But the quality is so good, and you're just cutting the middlemen, you're cutting the inefficiencies, you're cutting all of that ultimately you get the results. I mean, overall, an average of all the different projects we've done, we've probably completed more than 300 to 400 projects. Overall, we see the averages around, some of them it's a lot higher, some of them a bit lower, of course, but on average, it's about 59% faster time to market and about 60% cheaper. So that's money that you're not wasting in middlemen or, companies that are in between yourself and the creator. You're just giving it to a creator who then can use it to further themselves. And I tell you, some of the stories we've seen is students coming up with solutions that are way better, than what we would have received with traditional senior designers. And actually they beat the senior designers in their proposals. And for me, again, if we're going to go back with the traditional hat on, we would have probably gone to the senior designers, because that's where when you're recruiting, you probably want to try and maximize the value that you're trying to get out of that recruitment process. But here you are, this proves the opposite. It's about the ideas, it's about the opportunity, it's about the vision that these people can offer. And it's been mind-blowing. I mean, we've even managed to dissect projects and run them in parallel. We've done a robotic arm exercise. And we broke it down by the vision system, we broke it down by the mechanics, and then the electronics, and all the sort of software integrated behind it. And we just ran the 3 projects in parallel. We just defined the integration parts. And to be honest with you, managing to get a project up and running after, 30 days worth of brainstorming and figuring out how to make it happen, I can tell you, it never would have been much, much longer to see that through. Just the procurement process alone would have completely put us off even wanting to test it. And then we have our 3D printing capabilities in the company. We end up 3D printing, testing very quickly, going through further iterations. But that's the sort of the beauty of this industry, right? This flexibility, adaptability, and the way that you can try to see if this has any value and worth spending, millions of dollars towards this type of project, rather than you wasted 6 months to get some supplier to figure out if it's worth doing it.
I love it. So super simple is, hey, let's do a custom rendering. Meaning we have a client meeting in a couple weeks. Let's get a custom Airbus, not just a generic off-the-shelf rendering. Beautiful, right? So tactical, so simple, massively impactful. The second thing, though, which is huge, is this never would have gotten off the ground. And one of my favorite freelance use cases is one of the top financial service firms in their incubation team They iterate they innovate for 3 to 6 months. Then they give it to a strategy consultant freelancer for 10 to 15K. And they write the brief on if they should invest in it across the company. And that brief is probably one of the most important things. But as we all know, and from us founders know, we stink at writing corporate memos, and we do not understand TAM in a way that gets corp strat people to fund it. So it kind of sounded like that to me. Another thing you mentioned is, and I wonder if we all kind of feel this, is when you don't burden people with politics and you say, let's focus on the work, oh my God, do things get done. And whether it is a student that just isn't burdened by old legacy processes, or a middle manager that has a team of people that aren't burdened, like, incredible. So, John, yeah.
And that is, Mina, let me give you what I believe is another side of what you're talking about, because I think it's multi-sided. I just don't think for many of the people that we'd like to have on board for projects or for work or for whatever, I just don't think they find many of our companies interesting enough to join. I don't think they find it innovative enough to join. I don't think that they get paid well enough to join, but they're good for a project. And that's a powerful opportunity, because the reality is that many of these folks would not be full-time, but they're willing to be engaged and committed to the work that you're doing on a project basis when that project is either fairly priced and they need the dough, or it's attractive and they need the insight, they need the excitement of doing so.
Yeah, I'd like to think that we have a cool product, and that works. We make planes fly. I mean, that's pretty cool. Our ideas literally fly. So that kind of helps. We've seen the power of the Airbus brand definitely come into play. We've seen them really excited about it, and they're like asking us, can we do more? We want to really see much more of our stuff, take off. I had some of these individuals then text me a few weeks later saying, hey, by the way, I saw some of my work in some of the magazines and some of the news articles that someone took from the website and then used it, and it went viral in another direction. And it wasn't something that we had worked on, this magazine, but someone just took it from our website and decided to do something with it. And it was so ecstatic to see their work furthered. And for me, again, going back to the word empowerment, they saw their work take off.
That is beautiful. Tony, I'm going to ask you, and then Mari, I'm going to go over to you. Tony, okay, I'm going to pick on you, all right?
I'm ready.
You are the HR person.
That's right.
I would like you to now, you're allowed to now brown nose to John about his article, okay? And what I want to throw over to you, though, is empowerment is cute, but how can HR actually have a seat at the table and lead? Because as much as I do love the term freedom economy and empowerment, how does an HR person think about this?
Yeah, so you're referencing a really great article that John just published this week. It really is, and we talked about it a little bit earlier because it hits on exactly this point. And it's related to the concern that HR might be missing their mark on the future of work. If you haven't read it, check it out. But the point, I think, starts with, Matt, HR does have a seat at the table. Most organizations, especially mid and large organizations, have a dedicated HR role that, to John's point in the article, is expected to deliver strategic leadership to the organization. However, and I see this all the time, a lot of HR leaders or professionals see themselves as being the support function, see themselves as the therapist for the organization or the feel-good part of the organization, which, listen, that's all great, and it is part of a lot of expectations. But the primary expectation, especially now, is that as the world is changing in ways that we haven't seen, especially talent, HR leaders are expected to help navigate, figure this out, and lead the way, not wait and see what happens. And so for me, I spent my career in HR before joining Upwork, and I was a client of Upwork's because I saw the opportunity that they gave me to innovate the way that we look at the way we engage talent. It has to change. There's so much that's changing around us. And the biggest issue is a lot of HR leaders, they have so much going on. They're so hesitant to embrace more change, and they'd rather kind of wait and see how they navigate through the current dynamic and then maybe change later. And to me, that is a big mistake. The opportunity is now. If you want to lead the way, the opportunity is right now to do it, to embrace the things that are available now. Freelance and independent contractors as a tool for enterprises isn't brand new. This has been around for well over a decade and leveraged by large enterprises for well over a decade. But it's just starting to kind of catch hold. And as we look at the changes like generative AI, that's the biggest thing in the hype cycle right now, and companies are trying to figure out how do we deal with it. The answer is right in front of them with companies like Upwork, companies like Uncompany, and a multitude of others that can give you access to talent that is already becoming an expert in this without having to own the talent in order to get it done, or without having to build and justify a budget for full-time resources now into infinity to be able to support getting it done. Instead, it gives organizations the ability to experiment, figure out what they want to do, but start now rather than later. And I think that's the message and what I love about John's article at the end, the call to action for HR leaders to embrace the opportunity, think strategically, and be change leaders in their companies.
I would put a little bow on it saying the time is over to only own talent, right? And so, okay, Mark, you're going to kill me, Mark. Okay, I'm going to throw it over. You're going to go right after Steve, okay? And this is why. So we hit on the customer case studies, right? We hit on why in the world an Airbus, one of the best companies in the world, why in the world they actually care. We hit on the individual side of saying, okay, these individuals want freedom, they want empowerment, and they don't want to be owned, right? They want to be their own solo independent businesses. Now, Steve, I'm going to throw it over to you because I think, everyone on this panel embodies this, but Steve, you did this, 10, 20 years ago? You decided to say, I'm no longer going to be a high-flying VP. I'm going to be a freelance business. But I want to ask the panel, who can guess where Steve was a VP at before he decided to do the crazy solo business? Because I find this so freaking cool. But who can, guess where he worked? I'll admit I find it cooler than Airbus, but only if you're a super nerd.
Well, and only if you're old. The companies are long gone.
I know, but it's still so cool.
I'm sorry, but they're gone.
I love that. Oh, TRW.
But who can guess? Mina, do you guess where Steve was a VP at prior to going out on his own?
Kodak?
Kodak's still around.
I have a great Kodak story, but no, it wasn't Kodak. I actually met with Kodak I met with Kodak a couple years when I was the VP of a company called Macromedia, which was a software company. And before that, I was a VP at a company called Lotus Development. Macromedia was acquired by Adobe, Lotus by IBM. But anyway, I was at Macromedia, and we provided tools primarily for artists and creatives. And 2 years before they went bankrupt, we met with them, and they told us that digital photography was a dead end. And they had all the patents on digital photography. And we walked out of the meeting, and I was at Macromedia, and we said, oh, they must have been fooling us. They actually can't believe that. But an interesting failure story. But anyway, those two old software companies.
I want to give Steve an update on that story because we were invited once they'd completely fucked up their R&D. My old firm was invited to help them rebuild their R&D. And we did a bunch of interviews, and we sat down with the president and said, all of your creators, all of your innovators are being moved to manufacturing to manage the implementation of this stuff, and they're not coming back to R&D. You guys are systematically destroying the research function. Are you not aware of this? And the guy looked at us and went, you're fucking me. You gotta be, we're not really doing that.
So the bridge here is and I want to make sure I laser on this because there is, I would argue, the fastest growing segment that to me has the most industry-wide, impact is the 100K plus freelancers. And the bridge I want to make here is that right now we have, I'd say 5+ year high, or fast growing leaders. They're going down the director VP track, but they're choosing to freelance instead. They're choosing to be fractional CMOs. They're choosing to be fractional software managers. And Steve, you were one of the OGs in doing this, right? You were a VP, and not to too small, but you were a VP sitting in Singapore. My 20-year-old self would dream to be a VP living in Singapore, working at having a full-time job until I found the freelance economy. So I'd kind of love to hear from you, Steve, as the OG fractional executive. Why did you do it, and why, give us the why.
Yeah, my story is actually pretty typical of freelancers in general, which was I was doing well in my career. I was the chief marketing officer at a company called Macromedia I mentioned, and you just talked about my time in Asia with Lotus, and I loved my jobs. But I had young kids. I was working very hard. I was circling the globe because my responsibilities were global. And I decided I needed a break, and I took 6 months off. I said, I'll take 6 months off, and then I'll go back and get a real job. After 6 months, I said, I'll take 6 more months and go back and get a real job. And after 6 months like that, I was like, well, wow, freedom, flexibility, autonomy, and control. I may never have another real job, and I didn't. That was 20 odd years, well, almost 25 years ago now. So I was attracted by the same things that most freelancers are attracted by. I wanted flexibility, autonomy. I wanted control. I wanted that to have more time with my family. My wife was also she was a consultant in the energy industry and had a similarly aggressive career. And she agreed, and the two of us formed Emergent Research, and that was like 25 years ago. And so we've been working together ever since. And this is one of the few times when we're not together. We're together 7 by 24 by 365, work, home, everything, but it works for us. So I think my story is very typical, actually. And there are more and more people, as we found in our research, as you mentioned, the 100K plus club, we call them, has been growing quite rapidly over the last 3 or 4 years. In particular, the pandemic had an impact. Prior to that, it was growing faster than the number of independents in general. And so there are more and more people. Now, it's supply and demand. Demand for people with specialized skills on a freelance basis has gone up. The freelancers themselves see that. Employees see that. They say, wow, that, my friend went off and was able to do it. I'm able to go do it. And so there's a number of factors that are leading to that, both on the supply and demand side. But my story is just a very typical story. We tell people we not only study this market, but we live it. And we have for a long time.
And that's why I love every single one of you on the panel, to be honest. So, Mari, okay, you can talk about whatever you want, or what I really want you to talk about is the story of what happens when you can work together and really, really provide an outcome at scale. And I think you know which one I'm talking about. Yes. But
yeah, this has been awesome, and it's good to hear everybody's story and perspective. And I'd have to say too, the word empower. I mean, I think it all comes down to the fact, and then I'll talk about the other thing. I think it all comes down to the fact that when people realize self-employment, freelance, whatever you want to call it, they realize that they have control over building something that is theirs, and that didn't exist before. I grew up with a father who worked the same job from when he was 23 to when he was 65, and that's the mindset that a lot of companies still have, and I think a lot of people still get. But the change is made to where now people are coming out of college not saying, who do I want to work for, but what businesses do I want to start? And I think when they get that switch and they see that they can create a business around what they do, what they like, where they want to go, then it's like, the world is their oyster. And so I think for companies that are starting to partner with freelancers and build teams of freelancers, they need to understand their mindset is not, I need you to survive, but it's like, I want to partner with you so I can grow. And I think that will help that communication just be stronger. It's like, sure, I'll sit in this meeting. Is it needed? I'll be here to be your advocate, but I don't necessarily need you to grow my business. I need you to be a partnership with my business. And so I think it's just that switch has already happened. Yeah. Talking about the kind of the changes where I see everything going is, there's this been a massive explosion of number of freelancers and platforms, and John has talked a lot about that. But where I see things kind of going, and this is where Uncompany is filling the space, is this kind of niching down to these smaller marketplaces. It's like we can't be everything to everybody. So how we operate, how we work now is when we have a client that has specialty needs, instead of us trying to know all 54 million people globally and be compliant to every single country, city, all that stuff, which is, of course, Tony knows, an HR nightmare to try to worry about compliance on a global scale, especially as a small entity, as we just find these smarter partnerships. And so I think freelancers starting to kind of partner together in their own collectives based on skill, based on location, based on experience. I think we'll see more of that happening. And then us at Uncompany, as a client has a special request or has a special need or team to build, whether it's skill-based, experience-based, or market-based, finding these relationships with other marketplaces that are really focused on a niche, it makes the relationship stronger because that marketplace owner knows the talent, they know how to communicate the scope, the details, all those things. And then we just make those connections. And then the client at the end is getting really skilled specialty talent and a marketplace that can connect globally. So that's what's been really exciting to me. And I can see it continuing to grow as there's more industries, there's more marketplaces. And of course, there's new platforms and AI and TikTok and all these new things exploding. These specialty marketplaces will start to develop even more. And it's on us to figure out how to network the marketplaces together. And that's like the future where we're going.
I love it. So, okay, we're going to do a quick round robin on what is each of ours top 1 to 3 challenges. And I'll go first. I cannot get, for the life of me, I can't get my dog to drop the tennis ball in front of me. I have to chase him around the park, and it's a pain in the ass. So if any of you guys have that figured out, he's training me. Yes, I'm yes. But no, the real one that I will say is the top challenge that I get is change management. One person loves it, but then once you go beyond that one person who can see who has passion about it, the next 10 are saying passion's cute, but what's the tactical business outcome? Followed by, how is this so much better than me picking up the phone and calling my procurement team or my existing vendor? That is my biggest challenge, is the change management side of really going from this is nice to I need this. It's been true for the past 5 years. Nothing has changed. My life's just gotten easier. That is my number 1 challenge. I'm going to hand it over to Mina on the corporate side. And by the way, a quote from Mina is, I just want Amazon experience, make my life easy. Never forget that, Mina. Sorry, but we're not there yet.
I was literally going to be talking about that. Thanks for burning my...
Really?
no, but I mean, on a personal level, I say my top priority is remembering stuff. Now the content and the amount of stuff that I have to absorb on a day-to-day basis is just whoa. So that's definitely my top priority. My second priority is, how do I get content done quicker? As you said, Mari, the TikTok economy, trends are coming up all the time, and you just need to create stuff. I can't wait a week and a half until to be trend relevant. It's already past. So how do I make sure I can deliver content quickly to the quality that is brand compliant? And then that's what, as you said earlier, you need to find those people that you partner with, that you rely on, that you can go quickly to. So that's definitely being able to react quickly to market trends, and from a marketing point of view, build stuff like this. And then, as you said, Matt, is also accelerating that change of mindset. I think not enough people see the value of this freedom economy, or what we have been doing here is the flattery economy. But really is that kind of mindset of accelerating how we can push things further collectively, because it's quite tough to be part of a smaller subsect of individuals trying to accelerate things. But if you had that exponential effect, I think, you really take it to the next level, and you'd be super excited to see what's possible out of it.
I love it. Mina, throw it over to whoever you want.
Mari.
All right. This is good because I was going to jump in and interrupt you at the end anyway. I think there's an aspect of that rising tides mentality that I see a lot within kind of the freelance economy, freedom economy, and that's because we all want to see it be successful. And I think a lot of it is because we come from a place of ourselves being freelancers, coming from independent working, seeing the value it's brought to our lives. I know I started left my real job in 2008. So I think we see that value, and I think because of that, we want to see it be successful on a larger scale. And so I think the more that we can come together and help and support each other, whether it's connecting marketplaces, sharing resources, sharing learnings like we're doing, like Matt and John have pulled together, the better and stronger we will be as a whole. And to me, that's really exciting. I think the possible issues, things that I still continue to encounter, just general fear, and that can be from a dog.
Have we lost her
Uh,
for a moment?
yeah. I think the biggest challenge there is Wi-Fi, right? Chalk that up to that. All right. Well, on that note, you still there, Maury? Steve, over to you. The theme was operations. I think we can all relate that operationally getting a freelancer in the door is tough, and then doing it at scale is even tougher. And yeah, Steve, over to you. Biggest challenge.
It's okay. I'm going to switch gears to the biggest challenges of the freelancers themselves. Is that okay?
No, Steve.
All right. Well,
You can even do personal if you want. By the way, you can tell us. I know life's good over in California, but
yeah,
it's personal.
my challenges are pretty modest. I have them. Yeah, have a lot, but too few to mention. What's the song? The challenges that freelancers themselves all talk about, very consistent across all studies, pretty much is lack of predictable income, lack of benefits. But those, and there's a bunch of others.
And loneliness.
And loneliness. Yeah. And those, but that one's not. But the others are kind of a proxy for freelancing is risky. And so when we actually do our interviews and try to understand, get under the hood, the riskiness is the issue. So we've done a lot of work on risk analysis and freelancers and the population in general. And we find about 60% of Americans really don't have, and this is about Americans in this case, really don't have the risk profiles to be freelancers, to be self-employed. And so when you start with where you're saying 60% of your TAM isn't part of your TAM, realistically, it's time to figure out how to make it less risky. Now, the good news is it is less risky than it was, and our survey results show that both traditional employees and freelancers themselves are consistently saying every year, yeah, it's gotten less risky to be an independent worker, it's gotten more secure, but we still have a long way to go. And the less riskiness has been done, regulations have gotten a little better, laws. Certainly the growth of platforms make it better, technology has made it better, increased demand has make it better. But if you ask me what the big challenge is that we still need to work on, is we still need to think about how do we make it less risky and more secure for people to be independent workers. And so that's the challenge that I think that's the biggest challenge and the one we need to overcome.
That is so perfect, because I would say that is also on the company side.
Yeah.
And so risk. So when I started at Gigster, like super beady-eyed, right? And oh my God, let's change the world through software. We're in Silicon Valley, just, exuberant optimism. And then when I went to Microsoft, risk, trust, security, compliance. Then I went over and talked with Tony over at Stanley Black & Decker. Hey, bud, it's all cute. What about the risk? What about the compliance? And I'm like this little entrepreneur, like, but shut up. Let's talk about this elastic network of global talent. He's, risk. So I'm going to throw it over to you, Tony, then John, about what are your top challenges?
Yeah, I think that's a good one. And that's a good segue, Matt, because, most enterprises that I talk to, their first wall is risk. And I can understand that. HR leaders, managers in general, all functions are trying to think about our responsibility is de-risk the business. But that doesn't mean eliminate risk. And that is how often it's internalized. Hey, we eliminate risk by not doing something totally different. Like we built these structures and these processes to do this one thing, hire people full time. We start mixing that up with these other alternatives, and all of a sudden we're opening ourselves up to all this risk that we definitely don't understand, but we read headlines about companies getting in tons of trouble and paying millions of dollars all the time. So maybe you just don't do it. And maybe this is a fad that will pass. So to me, the big challenge is related to that. It's helping organizations, people in large enterprises, make that fundamental paradigm shift to recognize the way we've done things in the past. It's been completely disrupted in the last few years for very good reason. And it will continue on that path of disruption and change. So clinging on to the way things were structured and the paradigms that were set up before is not going to be an effective way to lead. And it's definitely not going to be an effective way to attract the best talent. And the best talent is another challenge because most organization leaders will tell me, we've got the best talent in the world. Like we just care about having talent density, the best people that do X, Y, Z. And I always think, do you really think all of the best talent and these skills live within a commuting radius of your office? No. There's a famous like freelance economy quote that talent and capability is distributed evenly across the world, but opportunity is. And that's why we exist. We want to bring economic opportunity so people can live better lives. That's Upwork's purpose, and I really believe that. And that's what this economy enables. We keep talking about power. So the challenge is getting people to see the connection of the challenges that are built into their paradigms before, or kind of the handcuffs that are keeping them from embracing the way that things work now and in the future, thanks to technology, thanks to empowerment, all these other things, and then make the necessary changes to build that experience and expand. And the biggest challenge is, it doesn't take a lot to get that first experience, but it's just getting folks to make that first step and to recognize this isn't even an or strategy. Like, we don't have to abandon. We're not telling you to never hire someone again. We're just telling you, be open-minded to the multiple levers to bring talent into an ecosystem to work for your organization. It is just, there's a wall. For most people, a wall that's up that's based on their previous experience that really makes it hard for them to see, like was already mentioned, see the value. But we all know it's there. It's there in spades. It's just a matter of being open-minded enough to see just a few examples related to your world and then start implementing that same kind of change.
I love it. So we've had Mari talking about operations, Steve talking about the risk, Tony, you just getting started. John, first question, how's the statue doing to send over to France? Because I think Mina, you guys are having a little bit too much fun burning stuff down, at least for what I've seen on YouTube. But John, I'm going to throw it over to you. John, I'm going to throw it over to you. What are the top challenges?
I've got many. So I've been writing a lot and I really enjoy it. And it's a way for me to sort of understand things. So let me talk about 3 articles that I've written or would like to write even better. And they relate to each of what everybody's talking about. Steve, I love the stuff that you've been doing around risk. And what we found, to Steve's point, when we look at our data, is there are 4 stages to an early freelance career. First stage is, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing and I hope I'm making some money. That's the pretty stage. And it lasts about a year. And around a year, you kind of figure it out. Or you leave freelancing. For those people that stay in freelancing after a year, between 1 and 3 years, their satisfaction is much higher than it was the first year because they know how to do it. They know how to get paid. They know how to build clients. They know how to not get fired, etc. And then at around the 3-year mark, they've got a third challenge, which is, I know I can do it, but do I want to? Is this who I am? And that's a big issue that seems to affect them for the next couple of years, between 3 and 5 years. Again, satisfaction's down. Year 1, satisfaction is low. Years 1 to 3, very high. Year 3, down again as you're trying to sort it out. Some people leave, some people stay. Those that stay are excited again, enthusiastic again, satisfied because they not only know how to do it, but for the period of time that they do it, they think that that's kind of fits with who they are. So the first thing that becomes important. I love what Steve said is it's just really important to teach people that there is a process here. It's not just step one, you get, you're good. The worst people in the world, the people who have the most trouble around this, former management consultants. And as I tell the story, Tony, were you ever a management consultant? I was. Steve, you were kind of.
No, I was out for 7 years. I was a management consultant right out of school.
I mean, I did begrudgingly work with a lot of them.
Yes, but here's the thing, and here's the thing that you begrudge, and here's the thing that Steve and I love. We roll out of bed into a black car. We go to the airport and fly business class. We stop at a 4 or 5 or a 5-star hotel. They love us when we walk in. They're excited to see us when we walk in. And then we reverse the process and get home and feel good because we've had such a lovely meal in first class or business class flying home. That ain't my life now, and it ain't Steve. Right? So part of the problem is I got to deal with the realities of what it means to change paths, not careers, but paths. Second point that I want to make is that HR's risk profile is abetted by its structure because it's structured for efficiency, not for effectiveness. One of the things that we used to know, Tony, you're too young, but Steve and I are not, average ratio of HR to an organization was 1 to 80, 1 to 100. Now 1 to 500 to 1,000. Now, how have they done that? By taking HR business partners from the field and getting rid of them and replacing them with flyby COEs, right? So there's the talent guy, and he flies to Asia, and he flies to the U.S., and he has a small team that knows fuck all about the organization, but a lot about learning and development. And they don't last long because they don't have impact. And at the end of the day, there's nobody on the ground that's making sure that this stuff sticks. That is a big problem. And let me add one other piece around that, and that is that they keep thinking that the big issue around their organization is culture. And therefore, if there are freelancers that don't get our culture, how could we possibly let them in? Mix your culture up. Your culture is not the greatest thing in the world. You need new vistas, new folks, new partners. Third thing that I want to share is one of the things that we have to do in freelancing is be as generous to each other as we expect our clients to be to us. I can't tell you how often I'm asked to do stuff for free by platforms where companies would never ask me to do that stuff for free. They can claim poverty, they can claim need, they can claim whatever they want. But at the end of the day, freelancers have to help freelancers as freelancers, not just as give me a pal. So those 3 things for me. One is got to be thinking freelancer first, got to be thinking about HR as an organization that's ready for a flexible blended workforce. And you got to be thinking about the stages of freelance development because it matters. And I'm so excited about the opportunity to share this stuff with each of you guys who in your own way are just making important stuff happen.
I love it. Okay, so we got the final thoughts, okay? And I know you guys are very, very expensive, so there's 4 minutes left, so I will not be offended if you just leave 1 minute before 1 o'clock, okay? Most important. Also, in related to Shopify, if I put the cost of this meeting, it would probably be between, $5,000 and $10,000, so I appreciate you all hopping on. So the last thing is, actually might be 10 to 15, not going to lie. Last thing is, what is the one thing that every single person listening to this should do right now? And what I will say is if you are a enterprise leader, take $15,000, take something that hasn't gotten off the shelf, hire a freelancer or freelancers to go do it. That's mine. John, we're going to go. Actually, you know what? John and Steve, you two are the ones that are going to finish the cage match. Tony, I'm going to go to you first.
And that's tough, Matt, because you stole mine. But I always say, especially in HR, like list a project. It frankly is addictive. Once you realize that you can find talent really quickly and just get things done, it opens up your mind into well, gosh, what else are we not doing that we could be doing if we just had the right help now instead of waiting? HR, like a lot of other back office functions, you wait in line behind sales and marketing for IT to work on anything for you. So, man, if you could just go out and find the IT resources you need to automate this process or digitize this tool, like it makes such a huge difference. And once you feel and realize that benefit, it's a lot easier to be a champion to other functions of the business. So I'll just piggyback on yours, Matt. It's a good one.
Hell yeah. All right, Mari, what's the one thing everyone should be doing right now?
Yeah, I think think proactively. So identify what project you have coming up, identify where you're going to be next year, what the new technologies are that you want to build in, and just try it out. Work towards it, think proactively, and start building that team or that freelancer need right now.
Mina, over to you. And I just want to make sure I haven't called this out, but every time, because one of my best friends is from France, right? I would say to you, fix the goddamn airport. I cannot stand your airport. It is a nightmare every time I go through it. So that is personally to you. Yeah, I know. But
we fly the planes. We have nothing. We don't even fly that. We make the planes.
We make the planes. Over to you, bud. What is the one thing everyone listening should do?
I would like for people who maybe just to build on what Tony and Mari said is, if you do decide to go into this world, be kind to the freelancers. Because by treating them with respect and being kind to them and valuing them, they will go above and beyond. That's sort of the experience I've had. A lot of these freelancers take a lot of pride in their work. And they want to showcase their work in the best of their abilities. Just give them a chance to do that, empower them, give them the freedom, mold that brief in a way that gives them some opportunity to do more if they can. Don't constrain them, and then just be delighted by everything they can offer you.
I love it. That is perfect. All right, Steve and John, you two duke it out. I'm not going to say which one goes first. Cage match begin.
I will always let Steve.
All right, I'll go first. My one thing is that everyone should be prepared to spend part of their life as a freelancer or independent worker of some kind. The way the trends are going, the historical piece of that, it's got the vast majority, at least of Americans, will at some point be an independent worker of some type. And you're better off if you think about that before it happens to you than if you think about it after it happens to you. So that's my one piece of advice.
I love that. John?
I'll follow up by saying that one of the largest obstacles to organizations using freelancers well is that their organization structures, which were created, and processes which were created for full-time employees, are in the way. So as you start to think about a flexible blended workforce, it's very different with managing a hierarchical role-based. And I think that we need to help them to get ahead of it. We need to help them to sort of think about what that means. And I'm especially thinking that Tony and I should write something. So
it's now public. You two have to do it. I love it. John, what Tony's going to do? Tony's not going to write. He's going to hire a freelancer for it.
ChatGPT.
Yeah. Tony's going to have a full freelance team behind him writing it. And you're going to, wow, this is beautiful. And Tony's going to be like, wait, what did I say? So I'm going to summarize this by saying the key things that popped out to me. John, you had first said the marketplaces that are succeeding, they're killing it because they got the business in place. Second thing is, Mari, you said, I want to partner with you so I can grow. Third thing, Steve, you said 60% of Americans don't have the risk profile to freelance yet. At some point, we're all going to freelance. I want to kind of summarize this by saying we're all already part of the freelance economy. The question is just, are we going to take advantage of it, or are we going to get swept up by it? Right. And I personally love surfing. One of the reasons I love it is because there's so many good analogies, but the wave is already about to crash on you. And if you haven't already taught yourself to surf, you're not screwed, but you'd better learn pretty quick to jump on the board. So with that, you all have made the Human Cloud podcast the best it possibly can be. You're our top 5 most listened to guests. And this is why you're here, because you guys absolutely crushed it. And I can't wait to see the conversation keep going. John and Tony, you have an article you have to write. You all should write an article together. We'll all get something together. And you listeners out there, connect with all of them ASAP. So that's it, y'all. Thanks for hopping on.
And congrats.
Of course, John. Of course. Of course.
In 2016, I called Steve King. I was a complete moron. I didn't know a freaking thing about this. And I said, but you write about it. You're smart. Could you teach me a little bit? And he did. I don't know that he's willing to commit to describing me as somebody who he thinks is intelligent, but everybody should have a Steve King. Everybody should have the opportunity to talk to somebody who's been around the block and is willing to take the time to sort of tell you how the wind blows. Well, thank you, Steve.
I'm glad my wife's not on the line. She might disagree, but certainly there's an old story about philosophers, and it's a long story, but Bertrand said, I learned more from Wittgenstein than Wittgenstein learned from me. And Wittgenstein, I've certainly learned much more from you than you've learned from me, John. So
not at all, but thank you for saying so. One last comment for Mina, and that is, Mina, watch the movie Harvey with James Stewart from 1938. And here's why, Mina. The most wonderful line in that movie, and a line that I've had in my head for about 60 freaking years, is, in this world, you must be oh so clever or oh so kind. I've tried clever. I recommend kind.
Lovely. Love it.
And there is a new line from the Human Cloud podcast, which is, John, send that statue over to Mina because he wants to have the freedom economy. And yes. So, all right, y'all, you're the best. Go take your meetings. Thank you so, so much for hopping on.